if they did all that stuff with a whole new IP, with whole new characters and a whole new story, something that's that's already came once before, and changed it into something that it's not originally or was originally meant to be, I wouldn't have an issue with it. I really just have an issue with it when they're taking old properties and changing them into something that they were originally not intended to be.
I guess now we'll go on to He-Man, because that's kind of like one of the major points you brought up. You said it was geared towards boys initially. I personally don't have an issue with changing who He-Man is geared towards, because at the end of the day, you're always going to have that first kind of like that first show. If you're a big fan of the first show, that's never getting taken away from you, and you might get disappointed by a sequel or whatever, but like at the end of the day, we've moved on in time so far forwards from that initial release that I don't really see an issue with gearing it towards somebody else, even if it's like maybe slightly disappointing to some of the older fans. Like at the end of the day, we both agree that the purpose of this is all to make money, really. At least when you're talking about bigger projects by larger studios. So I would say that ultimately, if they just make a decision that makes them the most money, I wouldn't really begrudge them for that. I don't know, it seems weird to want something to be never changing and ever persistent, because it's just what you enjoy, especially when you have the original property always there. But I guess like the very core of this disagreement is going to boil down to, so I understand what you think is bad, but my main question is, why do you think it's bad? Why do you dislike media going in a more woke direction? Why is that a negative in your opinion?
It's a negative for me personally, just because I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier. It takes away from good story writing, good developed characters, honoring the source material that came before it. And instead it's injected with some sort of woke agenda, that they're trying to push on their end to bring in, a different group of fans or audience, maybe, that's not really going to buy into it like the original fan base did. Like, I mean, for example, like, you go look at all the female characters, toy lines from the sequel trilogy Star Wars movies. They're all over on the shelves, that none of it sold, but as soon as Hasbro started putting out old school stuff, like the retro lines of old Kenner figures, some of the Luke Skywalker Mandalorian stuff that Hot Toys just did, that stuff sells out, and that's another reason why they're not really doing anything else with any of these characters from on the Star Wars side of things, and why Hasbro's not making any more figures from those movies, because it's not selling. And the rewatchability and stuff for those movies aren't really getting the kind of views that Disney was hoping that they would get. It made money just because it had the Star Wars brand name on it, but at the end of the day, they're not really moving forward with any of that stuff, just because they realized that the fans pretty much rejected it.
But I get that doesn't really answer my question though, because like I'm assuming you don't think it's bad because it didn't help products sell. Like that's not the reason you thought it was bad, right?
Well, I was really kind of just using that as an example on how Disney's understanding that the decisions they made on it were bad.
Yeah, but this is what I'm saying though, that I'm assuming that's not why you think it's bad. I don't care about why Disney might think it's bad. I'm asking you why you personally don't want overly woke media, basically. That's my question. Why do you think overly woke media is bad?
Oh, well, I answered that at the very beginning. I just said...
Oh, sorry, could you just say again? My bad.
I just said because I think that it takes away from the development of the characters, the story itself, and it's put there's too much put into whatever agenda it is that they're trying to push, on the audience.
Okay, so I'm super curious. If let's say that you had an incredibly woke media property that had a really, really good story, that had really, really interesting character development and that kind of thing. But all the characters are like LGBT, there's like a wide array of diversity and whatnot. But you ultimately really liked the property. I'm assuming, would you have any issue with the wokeness in that then? Like, let's say The Last Jedi was actually an amazing film.
If it was,
like, would you have an issue then?
If it was a completely new IP and not an existing one that they're trying to change from the original source material, no, I wouldn't have a problem with it.
Okay, but let's say it was. Let's say, for example, the latest Star Wars trilogy was ultra, like even more woke than it is right now, but it ended up being really good. Like all the characters had very interesting character arcs and decisions. It tied into the themes of the old Star Wars, even though it's like a new set of characters. Let's say that was the case. Would you still have an issue with it?
It just depends on if they completely went against, like for example, you know, if they went ultra woke and brought Luke Skywalker back and made him gay. No, I wouldn't like it. Even if his story and his decisions and all that, because that's not who he is. They're changing what. That's the thing. If they're gonna, if they did all that stuff with a whole new IP, with whole new characters and a whole new story, something that's that's already came once before and changed it into something that it's not originally or was originally meant to be, I wouldn't have an issue with it. I really just have an issue with it when they're taking old properties and changing them into something that they were originally not intended to be.